For a hip abduction or side hip stuff stretch, we are going to get into a position where we can kind of leverage the ground to give us some resistance. So for this exercise, if we are going to stretch the right side, you're going to think about coming onto your right side, and what we're aiming to feel is a stretch that runs along the side of the hip, even down towards the knee, or maybe a little bit up here, depending on what your goal is, but we're really kind of trying to find the stretch in through here. So as you're down on your side, you're gonna straighten the right leg. If you're doing your right side, obviously the opposite would be true if you're doing the left. And then you are going to stay in this position. Now, what you're looking for is that stretch in your hip. If you don't feel much of a stretch here, you have a couple options. We can elevate the bottom leg on a yoga block, which will increase the stretch. If you still don't feel a stretch, you can elevate the leg on another yoga block while we're driving that hip down. Now we're starting to feel more of a stretch. If you still don't feel a lot of a stretch, then what you can do is come up through here. Now, I'm getting a lot more stretch into my spine. If you want less spine movement, then what you can do is think about hiking your right hip towards your right shoulder, and you will get the stretch to move a little bit more into your hip. Depending on what your goal of this exercise is, you might need a little bit more in the spine, a little bit more in the hip. It's up to you or up to what your program says. Now, it's really important that in this stretch, we don't roll back. You will change the angle of the tissues, so you're gonna change where the stretch is felt. Maybe this is where you feel the most stretch, but for most people, you're gonna push out into the area that is most flexible. So you want to combat that by staying in the movement. For most people, that's gonna be staying rolled forward onto that hip, and now you're gonna feel the most stretch. So this is the most intense stretch. This would be a little bit less, or we can come here and drop the leg off the yoga blocks for a little bit less as well. The higher up you are, the more intense you might feel the stretch. The higher up the leg, the more intense you would feel the stretch. You're gonna hold the stretch for the prescribed amount of time. Typically, we're working up to 2 minutes, starting anywhere between 30 seconds up to 2 minutes and adding time until we get to that point. And then we are gonna do some PAILs and rails after to build strength at our end ranges. To perform PAILs, we are always gonna start contracting the stuff that is on stretch. So for this movement, for this exercise, we are going to contract the outside hip stuff by thinking about our lateral ankle. So on the outside of the ankle here, thinking about that being on a scale. So imagining this yoga block here is a scale and trying to make the scale weigh more, trying to crush the ankle into the ground. You're gonna ramp that up slowly. So start at like a light 10-20% contraction. Find those tissues. You should feel the side of your muscles contract. A little bit of glutes are gonna help stabilize, and then turn the volume dial up to the desired intensity, then hold for the prescribed amount of time, then ramp that down. That is your PAILs contraction. We're gonna follow that up with rails, which is going to be the inside hip stuff, the adductor, inner thigh tissues. You're also gonna feel a little bit of your core here. So what you're gonna think about is actively trying to pull your leg straight off the yoga block. You want to keep the knee locked. You want to keep yourself rotated here. And then you want to think about trying to float the leg up. You should feel a little bit of an increased stretch, and you should really feel these inside hip muscles working. What people will tend to do in this exercise is roll back or lean out of it or rotate to get their leg up. The goal is not to get the leg up. The goal is to contract these muscles. The second you do that, you're going to compensate and use muscles that we're not targeting, or you're gonna lean out of the position into the ranges you already have strength, which we're not really targeting that with this exercise as well. So make sure you maintain the position, nothing moves. You should feel a slight increase in sensation of the stretch, and you should really feel the muscles that we are working on the inner thighs contract, trying to do this motion. And you're going to ramp that up to the desired intensity, hold for the prescribed amount of time, and then ramp back down. And that would be one set of PAILs rails. You're gonna either be done after that or continue for the prescribed amount of sets. And that's going to be your hip abductor stretch with PAILs rails.